Right now, 73.
Get the app called Radio Pup for your iPhone and take us everywhere you go. Bismarck and Mandan's own Super Talk 1270.
Getting on with our bad selves here with the Hendricks. I'm Mortgage Talk 101, Joe Sheehan, your body built for radio. And we are here with Nancy and Greg from the North Dakota Association of Realtors. We are talking about the transfer tax, but before we do that, Greg, I'm going to turn to you. Explain to folks what, because we're talking about how you do protect homeowners' interests, and home buyers, home sellers, home ownership interests. What have you guys done in the past to kind of show that really you are on the homeowner side?
Well, that's a great question, Joe, and I appreciate it. First off, just to put it simple, home ownership is the driving force of the real estate industry. If we're not helping people buy homes, live in homes, protect their homes, stay in their homes, we don't have a business. So we have a real vested interest in the home buyer and the home seller and for the protection of property rights. Some of the things we've done most recently is we have worked to prevent a developer's fee, which is called a transfer fee, which goes hand in hand with this, that prevents a developer to charge a fee anytime anything he ever developed is sold, no matter how many times it's sold. That's illegal in North Dakota.
Is that the anti-Trump law?
Yes, it is. Exactly.
Isn't that one of the ways he made a ton of money?
Yeah, he still is.
He still is making a ton of money. So is that what you guys called it, or is that what you just joked about it?
That's the national term for it. We won't take credit for that. Ours was just the prohibition of a transfer fee.
You've been anti-Trumpified.
That's right. But a lot of other things, too. We were instrumental in getting the state to adopt a real estate commission to monitor us, to keep us honest, to keep us ethical. And we live by the code of ethics of the National Association of Realtors. We were very instrumental in North Dakota in getting our Congressman Kramer to become one of the founders, writers, and co-sponsors of the Affordable Flood Insurance Act. Just to be real brief, the flood insurance rates were going to skyrocket. It was going to really punch Fargo in the nose financially. Mm-hmm. And we as a state and we as a national association got with Congressman Kramer, several others, and when it came to the Senate, both Senator Heidkamp and Senator Hoeven were with it, so we had 100% participation in delaying those increases and doing research into what's an affordable flood insurance rate. And so we really were instrumental in that. That's just recently. In the past, we have pushed our education so that we are trained realtors, so that we know what we're doing with homeowners. And then there are several, with the farm industry, several initiated or not initiated measures, but legislation that we have lobbied for and pushed for to protect farmers, to protect how they can pass their farms on to their kids, how they can farm. We were involved in the Incorporated Farming Act way back when. We've also been working with mineral rights and leases. We've been in a coalition with that, trying to make sure that the mineral rights are protected, that the people who own the mineral rights have the rights to enjoy what they own there. So, we can go on and on and on, but I think that pretty much.
Well, and that's just what you can take credit for. There's lots of stuff that you have done behind the scenes. I will say, as my experience, as someone who's been active politically at a state level, and that it is the North Dakota Association of Realtors is trusted by other organizations in terms of its ability to both construct and activate legislation. And just a couple examples of things you didn't get credit for that I'm going to point out: the construction and passage of the appraisal management bill. The way appraisers are managed and how appraisal management companies are managed, that had to be, the state had to put a law on the books to comply with the we say Frank Dodd here, because if we say Dodd-Frank, sometimes people think we said Dot-Frank. And a lot of times we will say we hate the Frank Dodd bill. Well, one time we said it and it came off as we hate Dodd-Frank. Someone said, "Why do you guys hate Dodd-Frank?" And we go, "We don't hate Dodd-Frank. How'd you hear that?" "Well, you guys said it on the radio." And I was like, "Well, no, we didn't. We said we hate Dodd-Frank." And so we say Frank Dodd on this show. And but to comply with that, and you guys really basically took the lead on writing that, and it wasn't your responsibility. It wasn't anything that the realtors owned. And the other one was the SAFE Act for the licensure of mortgage loan officers. It was actually Klaus Lemke at that time and two other realtors who participated with the Department of Financial Institutions to write the first licensure test for loan officers. There was only one lender in the room, actually, during that whole time, and I know who it was. I know that's true because I was the only lender. And so even in that case, you guys have participated and been very generous with sharing your knowledge about how to write stuff for the legislation, for legal action, for and so there are a lot of people out there that could thank this organization, and they wouldn't even, and a lot of people wouldn't even know that you had participated in it.
And all that goes back to, if it's good for the homeowner, it's good for real estate. Yeah. Particularly the appraiser thing, that was a huge bill. I mean, that was a huge deal that they had to do. It was, I can't remember how many pages, but I know it was inches thick, not a few pages thick. And, the appraisal folks, they're friends of ours. We work with them every day. They just didn't have the bodies and the people in their organization to do it. And so we said, okay, let's make sure it happens and happens right. So that's good for the industry, good for the homeowners, good for realtors.
So just a plug from me because of my experience with it. Okay, so Nancy, tell us, what are we talking about here when we're talking about a transfer tax? Tell us what the risk is here to homeowners and what it is that you guys are fighting for here.
Well, a lot of times people wait until something bad happens and then they try to address it. And we said, why should we do that? Why should we wait until something bad happens? Why don't we address something before it happens? In 36 states and the District of Columbia, there are transfer taxes, which means anytime you purchase property or transfer property, there is an additional tax assessed on top of property taxes, on top of the deed registration fee, on top of other things that might be required by the subdivision, municipality, or state. And we know that in Minnesota there are similar taxes, in South Dakota. Montana went through a process similar to what we're trying to do now, and we said, we don't want to wait. We want to do something now and make sure that tax doesn't come to North Dakota.
So to be clear, currently, there isn't a proponent for the transfer tax.
That's correct.
Pretty much.
Okay, so there isn't really an opposition. This isn't you guys going out fighting an organization or an activist body that's saying we need a transfer tax. That doesn't exist. But what you're saying is we know it could happen. It would be bad for homeowners if it does, and we'd rather do it now while we can versus wait to fight somebody about it.
Correct. That's right.
And so explain to me. In terms of you saw other states doing this, and that was kind of where hey, let's be proactive. But explain exactly what a transfer tax is. Why would someone impose a transfer tax on homeowners? What has been the history in other states, and why would that come to North Dakota and rest here on our current homeowners? Basically,
a transfer tax, as Nancy explained, is a tax when property changes hands. You can call it a sales tax, you can call it a transfer tax, you can call it a mortgage tax. It's a tax on when property changes hands. We don't need another tax in North Dakota. Obviously, we're doing very, very well. But there are some communities, some municipalities who have some serious infrastructure needs throughout the state who may have to look at something like this as an additional source of income. That's kind of how it starts. It starts as a municipality need, and then it grows into a state need, and so they put this tax on it. They deal with it like it's a property tax. And you need to know that these aren't static taxes. They keep going up, they keep going up, they keep going up. Both Minnesota and South Dakota in their last legislative session tried to raise theirs. They weren't successful, but they'll be back trying to raise it again.
Well, it really is. It really becomes a hostage tax. Because you're not in a position where there's any way to avoid it if you're going to sell or buy a home.
Yeah.
And so the ability for somebody to turn to it and raise it, especially do you know in other states to raise or lower this tax? Who has the authority in other states to raise or lower the tax once it's established?
It varies by state. In most cases, it's the state legislature. I want to just stop a minute.
So it's
Joe.
never a vote. It's not necessarily a public vote to say, let's raise the transfer tax.
No.
And this is my point. It becomes a tax where you wind up having no choice. So if you wind up, just give you guys, how does this impact you as a homeowner? And if you have questions, 663-1270. But if you were selling your home, and let's say you gained 2% appreciation or 1% appreciation on it this year and sold it from last year, but now they increased the transfer tax 1%, you just lost all your gain.
Yep.
in the house.
Nancy's got a real-time story that's happening right now about what happens with that.
Yeah, there was a young couple. My husband's a realtor. There's a young couple that bought a home here in Bismarck. They moved here because she's a physician, and they have a condo in Philadelphia. There's a 4% transfer tax in Philadelphia, 2% from the city and 2% from the state. They couldn't afford to pay that 4% transfer tax, so they're going to lease their condo to be able to afford to buy the house that they bought here in Bismarck. It's a significant amount for people to have in addition to what they're already spending.
I normally am not tongue-tied. I was sorry. I was slightly tongue-tied there on the air because as we go into our next break, because I was thinking about the idea of this 4% tax, this idea that now there's a home that's not available to be sold for somebody else to experience the dream of home ownership. The fact that it's a condo, which means it's probably affordable housing in that area. It probably could be. And then finally, that this is happening in Philadelphia, where our first Continental Congress operated under the idea that they didn't want to be held hostage to unfair taxes. Okay. All right. The air was dripping with all kinds of irony and offensive overtones with the whole story. As we go to the break, Mortgage Talk 101 will be back. If you have questions, 663-1270. We'll back to talk more about how you can help support this measure and get it into the Constitution. We'll talk about why it's important it's a constitutional measure and all that stuff here on Mortgage Talk 101 after the break. Okay, back to something important here, though. Constitutional measure to ban all transfer taxes on real estate and the transfer of real estate property in North Dakota. Let's talk about how to do something now. So you're out there, what can you do about this so that you never have to, as a homeowner or business or landowner, any kind of property owner, ever be subject to paying a tax to sell your property to somebody else or pay a tax to buy property from someone else? So
in other words, to say no to the tax?
Right. How do you say no to the tax?
Say no to the tax, vote yes on Measure 2.
Makes sense. This must be political.
Unfortunately, the way measures are written, they're pretty confusing, and they have to be written in the positive. They can't be written in the negative. So we need to say yes to add the measure to the Constitution that will prohibit transfer taxes.
Do you know how much more successful my dating life would have been in high school had it worked according to these rules?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just letting you know. There would have been so many more yeses if no meant, yes, I guess.
Yes meant,
but so anyway, so you got to vote. When is the opportunity? When is it people got to get out, vote?
Well, it's on the November ballot.
Okay,
so
it is
general election ballots, Measure number 2 on the ballot. Early voting starts the end of September. So if you're going to vote early, you can vote on it then. It's on the ballot. It's number 2. There are 8 measures on the ballot this time. So could get a little confusing. So just remember, no tax, vote yes, Measure 2.
Measure 2, vote yes.
Vote yes to stop the tax.
Yes, stop the tax.
Right.
Yes.
There you
Would
go.
you like to stop the tax? Yes, I would like to stop the tax.
And if people want more information, we have a website, voteyesonmeasure2.com. There are facts on there. There are a list of people who are going to vote yes on Measure 2. If you're going to, go on the website, put your name down there. We'll have a list of activities going on. Like this afternoon, we have a press conference at 1:30 at my house, 735 Saddle Ridge Road. We're going to be outside, and we're going to talk to the media and explain why everybody should vote yes on Measure 2.
And of these people that are on, is there anybody of note on the website saying they're going to vote yes?
Me.
No tax? And you know what? You are something of a celebrity.
Yeah, aren't I not? Yeah,
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks there. It's just getting rolling. Because there are so many measures, large groups are not really signing up with each other's coalitions like they have in the past. But we are supported.
You don't have necessarily the chamber on there and all that. Right?
They support it.
But there's no reason right now for them to.
Well, yeah. Plus, they've got a fight on their own hands for another measure. But home builders are supporting it. The industry supports it. It's a good idea. It has support.
Well, and you said this came from a legislative vote to put
Correct,
this on the ballot. You didn't even have to go get signatures to bring this about.
Again, we believe in the legislative process. That's where we started. they took it to hear at our request.
And and it's already here. What are the other things? If you're somebody who's really concerned about this, really want to make it happen, what are the things you can do to support the measure and make people aware of it?
You can put information on your own Facebook sites. If you have a website, put it on your website. We have brochures we can make available to people. We have a PowerPoint if they want to go out and do presentations for us. We have buttons if they want to wear a button so that people ask them, what Measure 2 is, and they can explain to them that they need to vote yes on Measure 2.
Plus, we're available to talk. If they have a group of people they want us to talk to, they can contact the board office, and we'll make arrangements to get someone there to talk to them. We'll have yard signs.
Well, so how do you get a hold of the board office? How do I get somebody? If I do have a group that I want to hear the message about why I need to vote yes on Measure 2, who do I call? Where do I call?
701-355-1010 is our office number. Or you can email me, Nancy, at ndrealtors.com.
Okay. What final thoughts? So we're going into the last segment here. What are the things that people have to know about Measure 2 before we close up the show?
I think people need to know that even though we don't have the tax now, there continue to be reductions in property taxes. Municipalities are looking for other avenues of revenue. So it's not so far-fetched that this is a tax that could come to North Dakota. The best way to safeguard their property rights is to vote yes on Measure 2.
Yeah, just remember this time we're going to try to close the barn before the horses get out.
Given that this hopefully or probably will pass, what is next on the horizon for NDAR? What is it that you guys also are focused on and helping North Dakotans out with as here in the near future?
Probably right now there isn't anything big that we're looking at for legislative session, although we're watching all of the taxation committee activities that are going on. But there is one bill that we're looking at asking someone to introduce, and that would be allowing people who, for some reason, have lost their earnest money to be able to go to small claims court in the county or location in which the property is located. Right now they can't do that, and so if somebody's gone out of state, they've kind of lost the ability to be able to go to small claims court.
So wait a minute. So explain that. And I don't know if everybody know if you haven't been in transaction recently or ever. Earnest money is something that the buyer gives to the seller that shows good faith interest to complete the contract and buy the house. So, for example, if Greg is selling me his house, I would give him, let's say, $1,000 in earnest money, and in the event that I then pull out in bad faith or for any reason, Greg would have the right to keep that $1,000 to cover his time and lost market time and everything, or any expenses involved with having engaged with me in a contract while that house was off the market. So right now what you're saying is that I don't have the right to go to small claims. So Greg wouldn't have the right to go to small claims court to recover that earnest money if for some reason I didn't pay it?
You have the right, but you have to do it in the court in which the person resides. So if that person is from out of state, you'd...
So if I was from Philadelphia, Greg would have to go out to Philadelphia to sue me for the $1,000.
That's correct. Right.
Well, since I have to pay it, and this is kind of a practical issue, so I'm glad we're kind of closing the show down with this. So if I have to pay it to you first, Greg, how is it that you don't get it?
Well, I never get it. Earnest money is a show of faith. It's held by the closing company or by a real estate firm. Where the issue happens is if there's a dispute over who gets the earnest money, then it has to go to small claims court, and then it has to go to where the seller lives.
Where the seller lives or where the buyer lives?
Seller lives.
Seller lives, okay. But in the event that you need to go to small claims court, otherwise you'd have to go where the buyer lives then?
I'm not sure I followed that question, actually, but on an earnest money case, it's always, the money should return to the buyer unless there's an issue, and then the seller creates the issue.
Got it.
So to get his money back or her money back, the buyer has to go to the seller to get it back.
And right now, you guys want to be able to make that so that it happens where the transaction's at.
Correct.
And that's where the small claims court case can happen.
Correct.
Yep.
Has that been, how was that issue brought up? Who Is this just a practical issue brought forward by the realtors voicing their concern in terms of earnest money disputes? And
Yes.
Kind of historical. This is happening. People who should maybe get their earnest money back can't.
Here's what I love about this issue to listeners. I love this issue. I hope to have you guys back on to actually talk about this, because right now, this is what's on the horizon for the next legislative session. It means there aren't any really great big problems on the horizon for the next legislative session. And what's great about that is that this is the kind of issue that really does hurt people at a day-to-day level. Because I'm not in the middle of earnest money disputes and what the actual outcome of those are. I'm there when people start the dispute because a sale there's a sale that fails or something like that over various reasons, inspections, cold feet, whatever. And so I hear about those disputes starting. I'm never there for the completion of how those disputes get resolved. But the idea that you guys are going to actually be able to do something politically and legislatively maybe at a level where it actually impacts people in a transaction is really encouraging for the next legislative session, if that's the case, because it's been a long time. The last few legislative sessions have had big issues like taxes and transfers and property taxes, all kinds of huge macro level issues that you guys have had to deal with. So.
And we will be looking at some of those big issues. Like we're still going to be looking at the Fargo diversion project and, what ultimately happens with that. So.
But you're going to maybe have time for something right down in the dirt and the gravel where the people are living. So, okay, well, as we close up one more time, how do they get a hold of North Dakota Association of Realtors if they need you?
701-355-1010 or Nancy at ndrealtors.com, and vote yes on Measure 2.
And the press conference is when?
1:30 p.m. today, 735 Saddle Ridge Road.
All right. Thank you so
Joe.
much, Greg, Nancy, for coming in, talking to us about the transfer tax and how to protect home ownership and the rights of buyers and sellers to protect themselves against a little extra cost in the future. Back next week on Mortgage Talk 101.